going? Yes, it is.
Whoa.
Okay. Well, I want to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for the Cameron Park CSD. It is Wednesday, June 16, 2021, and we're starting at 6:33 p.m. So, General Manager, would you please call roll?
Yes. Director Easton?
Here.
Director Carlson?
Here.
Director Bazette?
Present.
Director Scobie?
Here.
Director Wooten?
Here.
Wonderful. Next, we step into a Pledge of Allegiance. Director Wooten, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Wooten. All right, as we move through the agenda, just a reminder, the public testimony will be received on each agenda item as it is called. Principal party on each side of an issue is allocated 10 minutes to speak. Individual comments are limited to 3 minutes, except with the consent of the board. Individuals shall be allowed to speak on an item only once. Members of the audience are asked to volunteer their name before addressing the board, and the board reserves the right to waive said rules by a majority of vote. So with that, we step into the adoption of tonight's agenda. Do we have any questions, additions, corrections to the agenda, or any motions?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Okay, Director
I will
Bazette,
second that motion.
and second, Director Wooten. Manager, would you roll call that motion, please?
Director Easton?
Aye.
Director Carlson?
Aye.
Director Bazette?
Aye.
Director Scobie?
Aye.
Director Wooten?
Aye.
All right, and next we move to recognitions and presentations. I do not believe we have any tonight, General Manager. All right.
Correct. But we will in July and August, time permitting, on our agenda items, but we have a couple of planned presentations for the next couple of months.
Wonderful. Yes, we talked about that. Looking forward to it. All right, next is our open forum for non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda that falls within the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors. So we have one member of the public here. Good to see you tonight, Barbara. This is open forum time, so if you have anything you want to bring to us, now is your time. Okay. Seeing no hand, we will close open forum and move now to the approval of the consent agenda. So I'll put this to my fellow directors. Any additions on this or comment, General Manager?
Yeah, I'd like to pull the item 4, the conformed agenda, from tonight's agenda, and we'll bring it back next month. There is an omission on there. So. Okay.
So we'll pull item 4 from the consent agenda, bring that back next month. Anything else from my fellow directors? Questions, comments, or a motion?
This is Director Carlson. I move to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item number 4 to come back at a future meeting.
Director Carlson, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Director Bazette. General Manager, roll call, please.
Director Easton?
Aye.
Director Carlson?
Aye.
Oh, gosh. Director Scobie?
Aye.
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Director,
Especially when my name's there.
when I think about it. Director Wooten?
I'm here. Aye.
Okay, good. Director Bazette?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, now we will move to general business. And with no items removed from the consent agenda for discussion, we'll move to general business item number 12 to approve the fiscal year 2019-20 audit. And Christina, I think that you're going to step us into this with the general manager.
Oh, I guess so. Sorry. Well, we went over this at the budget and admin committee, and they reviewed the 1920 audit There was one change that they had requested was to add the change in net or to put the reserves in the net position of monies that were not available. So we did have our auditor make those changes. Is the auditor on the meeting as well to go over? Okay. So I'll let him talk about the audit and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, we have Michael and Kamiko here tonight. Good to see you both.
Hi, good to see you.
Okay. This is any summary report that you want to give us before we bring this to the board for questions?
Yeah. Michael, do you want to walk the board through kind of like you did with the budget admin committee, just hit the highlights? Wonder if Kamiko, you want to hit the highlights back on the Zoom call?
I will do my best. I'm not an auditor though. So the audit went great. As Michael can tell you, there were no findings for this year, which is always a good thing. And let me see if I can find the right page to show you.
I think, Michael, can you speak now?
There. Oh, we can't hear you, Michael.
You just got unmuted that I saw.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who wants
So
to run with
you
that?
have a question? I'm sorry about that. I missed what you were talking
That's
about.
all right. Michael, if you could just walk us, the board members, through the highlights of the audit, that would be great, kind of like you did with the.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
committee.
I'll do that right now. I was looking at the agenda. I didn't think we were coming this fast, but I guess I missed it. So
We were quick tonight.
That's how we roll.
yes, yes. Okay, so I will walk through the audit really quick. Please feel free to interrupt me with questions at any time. So page 1 and 2 of the audit.
That's
One in-
attachment 12B, right?
We go to page,
Yeah.
page 1 and 2. So here's our audit opinion. This is the result of our audit, the main result. And it basically says everything was done in compliance with all the rules and regulations. This is what's called an unmodified opinion, so there was no modifications. This is a best opinion. Is on our letterhead. If the board's ever had questions of us, our contact information is there. The audit is always ongoing. If you ever had questions, you could contact us at any time, contact me at any time. So that's all I want to point out on this page. Next, I like to go to page 7.
Okay.
Page 7, at the bottom of this page, you page down a little bit. Okay, right there you go. This is your statement of net position. It's on the full accrual basis of accounting as if you were a for-profit company. And the bottom line is where you have the double line at the bottom is your total net position is your assets less liabilities, 15,522,744. Very positive. And just wanted to point that out. This is as of June 30, 2020. So it's almost a year ago and it's a snapshot at that time. But that is your net position at that time. So that's all I wanted to point out on this page. Then on the next page, this is your statement of activities. Again, it's on the full accrual basis of accounting. Governments are in the business of providing services, so it starts with expenses, $7.2 million in worth of services that the district provided to the community. Then you have charges for services, some grants, and what's left over, you have about over $5 million, $5.5 million that gets subsidized by taxes and some interest and other things. That brought you down to this third line from the bottom, 24/7/22 that you spent more than you brought in. It's actually very small, especially during the COVID year. I think that's very positive. And then it brings you to your ending net position of the, $15.5 million. And that's all I wanted to point out on this page. So you can go to the next page. So this is page 9, I think. And page 9. So this is your balance sheet, but it's on a modified accrual basis of accounting. It's almost cash basis. And it breaks out your balance sheet as of June 30, 2020, almost a year ago. Snapshot at that time, breaks it down by all the funds. So you're wondering what all the pots of money that the district has. So on a modified accrual basis, this does not include capital assets and long-term debt. But your total fund balance on the right is $7.5 million. You can see your general fund balance is 3.229964. All fund balances there are healthy in the black. And that's all I wanted to point out on this page. If there are no questions, you go to page 11.
You have a question?
I have a question real quick.
Gobi.
And I'm sure this has to do with auditing, but we have a column called debt service for $500,000.
That is money set aside for debt service.
So is
That's
that,
to pay principal and interest on the bonds.
okay, thank you.
Pages in between are reconciliation pages between the modified and the full accrual. They're a little bit complicated, but those are the reconciling items. On this page, there's basically your revenue and expenditures on the modified accrual basis for the whole year, your whole activity. So you can see their total revenues on the right, almost 7.3 million. You have expenses, 7.657. Then there are transfers going between funds, those equal out. Overall, you have on the right, you spent more than you brought in, 372,241. Most likely due to the COVID timing. General fund absorbed most of it, 319,565 deficit there. But the general fund still has a positive fund balance of the $3.2 million. And that's all I wanted to point out on this page. And that's really the end of the presentation. After this is you have all the notes that give you more information about the district and about some of its accounting policies and a little bit more about your capital assets and your debts. And that's all in the notes. I'm not going to go through there. There is some other schedules in the back for pension reporting as well as budgetary reporting. I'm not going to go through those, but just to give you an idea what the rest of the report has in it.
Director Scobie, you have a question?
I have, unless somebody has questions.
Yeah, I have another question. You had mentioned that, our deficit, we ended up spending more than we took in due to COVID. In your experience, could you speak to your understanding of other special districts or other agencies that you've looked at on how they fared in the pandemic, just briefly?
Well, park and rec districts all have had similar problems in the sense that the last quarter of the year, obviously the revenue dropped off a lot. Activity dropped off a lot. So this is pretty consistent. I mean, I don't have their financials in my brain right now, but I know they all had deficits of spending more than they brought in for this year. And it was mainly due to the last quarter due to COVID. Obviously, a lot of changes happened. But yeah, so this is not unusual. I mean, the district is not out of line compared to anybody else. I mean, there was pain felt a lot of places. It was spread.
Great, thank you.
Or-
All right, any other questions from the directors?
This Felicity, I did get to see this presentation and discuss it in the budget and admin committee, so I appreciate the presentation then and now. And I will just repeat a couple of the comments that I made then, which is that I also really appreciate your perspective, Mr. O'Connor, on the district really being in relatively, I know I'm paraphrasing, but being in okay shape given the pandemic, given the circumstances. So it is good to hear that from a professional that is working with other similar entities. And it sounds like Christina is of a similar mind, but I'm interested in the future in having a look, having an auditor look at the district's internal controls over financial reporting. So that's something that we're hopefully going to be looking at in the future. And those are my main comments. Just thank staff for the CPA and everybody for working so hard to get this done. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board before we go out to public?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment the staff on getting this done so quickly. I know we struggled in the past getting these done, and when I first came on the board, we were like years behind on our audit, and then just having this just sliding in as regular business, I have to say thank you for just being on top of everything. And we're coming through with, let's see, I don't remember the terminology, but no comments or a good, it just gives us some comfort that we're doing things right. And I just really appreciate staff doing that. So thank you.
I'd just like to thank Laura and Nikki at the district. Without them, it wouldn't be possible. So
It's just worth pointing out all of the layers that happened in this, besides a COVID year and a change in finance and HR office, and not being able to do this in person, where there's an efficiency there rather than calls and emails and scanning and all that. So with all of those things piled up, yes, good work. Thank you very much. All right, any other questions from the board before we open to public?
I'd just like to say, I think this looks pretty darn good, even through a pandemic compared to several years ago. Thank you.
Director Bazette, I see your hand too.
Yes, I actually, again, I'm impressed with the changes of staffing in the fiscal area. That's very impressive. My question as a new director is, how often is an audit done? Is there a legal requirement? Is there a standard of practice, or how often do these happen?
They have to be done every year.
It is an annual event. Okay.
Yeah.
It is the same time every year, pretty much.
It fluctuates. Some years are sooner, some are later. It just depends when staff are ready. I think the pandemic slowed it down this year. But there's been some years in the past where the district got it done even earlier. And I think in the last year or two, I think the pandemic slowed it down this year. But the district now, with the help of the staff they have and with the help of Heidi Bailey, Kamiko and her staff, they've been getting this stuff done a lot quicker, getting the information to us a lot quicker. So sometimes it's done within 6 months or so after year end.
Okay, thank you very much.
And for some context, Director Bazette, too, a few years ago, we were actually 2 years behind in our audits.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
There you go.
And so Bailey has been just phenomenal in helping us out, and the general manager and our finance office have been working really hard to get us up to speed. So we're looking forward to coming out of a COVID year, and this will probably hopefully come to the board even sooner next year. And so as it influences our budget making decisions.
Thank you.
So, okay. Any other questions from the directors before we open to public? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll open up to public comment at this point. Barbara, if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah.
Seeing none, go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board. So we've asked questions and we have recognized the good work of staff here. I do want to make sure we highlight and recognize in the summary discussion on this report. So my fellow directors remember that the fourth quarter is our biggest revenue quarter. General Manager, I believe about half of our revenue comes in that
Yes.
fourth quarter, and that's when COVID hit. And so when you see the summary of revenue losses were 800,000, but expenditures reduced by 700,000. Staff did a phenomenal job keeping us close. So thank you all on that. Comments or questions before we take action? General Manager, any other comments or questions before we take action?
Oh, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked. No, other than we're already working on the 2021 close. And so, I think that that'll be to you by the end of the year or very early in 2022. So.
Wonderful. We'll look forward to that. Okay, so this is our recommended action tonight is to review and approve. So do we have any other questions or a motion from the board? Any other questions?
This is Director Carlson. I move to approve the fiscal year 2019-2020 audit.
I second that
I
motion.
would second that motion.
We have competing seconds. Director Bazette, I think you slipped in first. All right, so we have a first and a second. General Manager, would you please take roll call?
Director Easton,
Aye.
Director Carlson,
Aye.
Director Bazette,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Wooten.
Aye.
All right, motion carried 5-0.
Oh, boy.
Excellent.
Wonderful. It is nice to put that to bed.
Whoop, whoop.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kamiko, for carrying us there. Appreciate your work.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, General Manager, is there anything else that we're here for, or are we going to release them?
Nope, I think that Kamiko and Michael, good night. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Night.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Safe travel. Okay, let's move on to item number 13. This is the public hearing to approve resolution 2021-18, establishing appropriation limitation for fiscal year 2021-22 for the Cameron Park Community Services District. All right, Christina, this has got your name on it too. Can you set us up with this, with the summary on it?
All right, so every year the county gives us a growth factor based on, it's a percentage based on the people, and they gave it to us as 0.0689. So they use our previous year and we use that as a multiplier basically for inflation. And this year, our 2021 appropriations limit was $12,493,109. And that's just basically, our property taxes and all of that, and any kind of monies that we get from the county. So we're pretty good with that limit.
And the reminder to the directors is this is an appropriations formula. This is not what we are expected to spend, nor what we will. This is just an allowance for the district to operate within. Okay, thank you, Christina. Any questions from the board?
Well, it would be nice to have that amount of money to spend.
Yes, it would.
No question there.
To refix the screen here.
And Eric, do you need to open
Open a
the
public hearing.
public hearing?
Yes, thank you for that. So we will officially open the public hearing for this resolution, 2021-18, to establish the appropriations limitation for fiscal year 2021-22. So with the official open of the public hearing, any other questions from the directors before I open for public comment?
This is Director Carlson. I'm just going to reiterate that this is a basically a formula. It's formulaic. In my opinion, there's not a lot to debate, and it's something just to move forward with, and that's what I hope we do. Thank you.
Mhm.
General Manager, would we want to read the resolution before we open for public comment, or do we need to do that?
Jason, I don't think we need to read the resolution, right?
All right.
Right.
Seeing no other questions from my fellow directors, I'll open this up for public comment. Okay, seeing no hand, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And we'll bring this back to the board.
So, and you'll want to close the public hearing too, Eric.
Thank you for that. So we will officially close the public hearing on Resolution 2021-18. Bring this back to the board for other questions or action.
And whoever makes a motion, if you could maybe just really cite the resolution number, that would be great. And the title of the resolution.
Do we have a motion from the board?
Yeah, this is Director Carlson. I move to approve Resolution 2021-18, establishing appropriations limitation for fiscal year 2021-2022 for the Cameron Park Community Services District.
Thank you, Director Carlson. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Director Scobie. With that, General Manager, roll call vote, please.
Director Easton?
Aye.
Director Carlson?
Aye.
Director Bazette?
Aye.
Director Scobie?
Aye.
Director Wooten?
We
And
lost her.
we lost her. Ooh.
Okay.
I think I heard her say something about adjusting the screen.
Yeah, she was
Oh.
frozen.
Oh,
Okay, so
the second attendee in the public, I don't know if that would be.
no, that's Jonna Rossi from Cameron Park Lake.
Thought so. Just want to make sure we've had
Yeah.
Acer with folks.
Yeah.
Connected.
I'll just have Director Wooten absent starting at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Okay, we'll
Okay, and
Okay.
so it's a 401 on that one.
Thank you, General Manager. All right, we will move to item number 14 now. Public hearing to approve fiscal year 2021-2022 preliminary budget. So at this point, I will open the public hearing for the 2021-22 preliminary budget. And a reminder that this is a preliminary budget. This gives us operating room to start with our fiscal year July 1. There will be a final budget with any adjustments from this that comes back to us in August. So, General Manager, would you please walk us into this?
Yeah, so I want to thank the Budget and Admin Committee. I want to thank Laura and Nikki. Christina came in at the tail end of this, helped as well. Staff, Mike Grassley, Sherry Morans, everybody worked really hard on this budget. Well, we didn't have a finance officer, and it was nice. So we met with the Budget and Admin Committee 3 times, April, May, and June. Each time, I think that the feedback from the public, staff, and the committee members was very valuable. We're coming to you with a budget. Appropriation expenditures are $6.6 million, and we have revenues of $6.6 million. And this budget invests $46,639 into our reserves. So we were really excited to be able to put that aside. I think all of us have been working on this. This is our 3rd cycle with the current in our budget. And so we're very thankful that we were able to tweak it down to this amount. And there's Ellie. Welcome back, Ellie. Okay, let me hit some highlights. Property taxes were increased 5%. That's based on our year-to-date revenues that we've received and our projections based on our year-to-date revenues. We will continue to look for those third and final payments to come in and make any adjustments for final that we need to. And most of our service levels in all of our departments remain the same. Mike Grassley is here tonight. Sherry Moranz is here tonight. Christine is here tonight. So if you have any specific questions about any of the department budgets, we're here and can answer those for you. The fire marshal program is expanding. They're expanding their revenues for more inspections. Also, they're expanding their service levels and staffing for more inspections. The recreation department is planning for a phased reopening of recreation programs. We're going to continue to concentrate and expand our aquatics program. I know that Mike Grassley and Kim are having some real conversations about, you've programmed the pool to such an extent that maintenance is having a difficult time getting in there to maintain the pool. So, we're juggling all of those schedules right now. Also, a portion of the property tax that has been assigned to recreation is supporting the receptionist position. That position moved from the administration department to the recreation department. And the reason for that is that the recreation department is kind of the people side of the business of the district. And so it made sense for the receptionist to be there and coordinate all of those while they're coordinating all those community center activities. The revenues that were assigned to the community center rental of the assembly hall, that amount is based on fiscal year 1920, what we had received prior to COVID. So that was the exact number, or really close to the number that we had received in revenues in fiscal year 1920. So we're hoping that we're going to get back to that number. So
I think you meant 2020, not 1920.
in 1920, prior to COVID, in March,
1920 is 100 years ago.
Fiscal year 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
I used to be confused by that too.
Sorry,
1920 means 2019 plus 2020.
2020, sorry.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
skipping, sorry. So anyway. in
Time
March
does
of-
fly.
Yeah, I can say that in March of 2020,
Thank you.
we had received that much in revenues for that fiscal year. So, okay. Insurance costs really climbed this year for liability insurance. We did have some of that was offset by a decrease in workers' comp. And the reason that insurance costs climbed was the amount of these settlement agreements. It wasn't necessarily the number of settlement agreements had increased, but it was the amount per settlement agreement had increased. So, and we included some new revenues based on actual revenues that we had been receiving. Weed abatement, we are receiving some revenues from liens from the county. Also, we have homeowners that are property owners that are paying us for the abatement activity. So we've never budgeted. We budgeted initially 3 years ago for it. We took it out because we had not been receiving revenues. We put it back in because we now are receiving revenues.
That's interesting.
And then also, and this is something new revenues, the LLADs are paying for overhead costs and staff time. So Mike's time, finance office time, there is a little bit of time from the staff who are assigned to and oversee the LLADs. The LLADs are now offsetting the general fund for that amount of money. So that's another new revenue. So, and we have a new line item. It is 7,001 allocation to capital asset reserves. And we have put a little bit of money. It's, I calculated out, it's 0.7% of our overall budget is now going into reserves.
A historic moment for the district.
Yes.
Yes.
So Jill, what is typical for community service districts? What amount of reserve is a standard?
I don't know that there is a standard. Maybe Christina has some information on that. I don't know that there is a standard. I think everybody's a little bit different, but I do think that, you know, having something anywhere from 1% to 5% would be really good. And a lot of that is based on what repairs that you need. So for example, Mike has made an assessment of what, you know, HVAC system, you know, when is that scheduled to be replaced? The roof for the community center, when is that scheduled to be replaced? So some of those things we need to start setting aside now.
And it's worth mentioning, Director Bazet, that we have not had a allocation to reserves in our budget for quite a long time. Barbara might be able to even remember that.
Well, there's never even been a line for it? Wow.
I can't say never, not in recent memory.
Okay.
So this is something we've been working toward for the last few years as we clean everything up. And
I like seeing that number.
excited for that. And it's worth noting too that because this came through our committee 3 times, we actually put the line in without anything on it at first, just wanting to make sure there's a placeholder for when it happens. And then staff came back with some other adjustments, and there we are. We now actually have something we can allocate. So that was good work and exciting to see. Okay, General Manager, I'm sorry.
That's all I've got, unless anybody has questions for me or any of the other directors that are here tonight. Department directors.
Okay, so Board, I'm assuming you've had the chance to look through the budget. So if you have particular questions on a section or something that you want to highlight or ask about, this is a great time to ask your questions. We'll go to the public with their questions as well, once we've heard from you. So if you have any particular sections you want to ask questions on, feel free to do that.
This is Director Scobie. I have a couple of questions, comments. We have this nifty new solar program coming in, and I see that it's been addressed that we probably won't be seeing some savings for another year or two, which is fine. However, on our budget, we have lumped our utilities, gas and electric, into one line item. And I think that we might want to consider breaking that up into electric and gas as 2 separate line items, so that we don't muddy the waters as we're seeing our electric bill reduce. So I wanted to throw that comment out. The other comment I have is that, you know, I recognize that we started, you know, our general manager and our staff, we started with a brand new budget, ground up, and it takes some while to settle things in, and we've been evolving over the last several years. And one thing I've noticed is that if we keep changing positions and reassigning people to different areas, it makes it a challenge for us going forward to see how our budget is changing from year to year. So it would be nice if, you know, like, for example, the receptionist position is it's been allocated in different areas, and it's difficult. I see that because the receptionist does all kinds of work. They do work in CCNRs, they do work in Park and Rec, they help the admin, and recreation and so forth. So I understand that it's difficult. I'm just thinking that it would probably be good for the district if we just kept that position, kind of just laid it down and didn't move it around so much. Just to make things a little clearer going forward, so that we don't muddy the waters again with that position moving around. The other comment is similar to that, is on the fire marshal fees. The fire marshal fees have now been moved from the fire department over to the weed abatement, and I think that's fine if that's where we want to keep it. I just would say that we need to minimize these type of shifts year over year, so that we can see how our budget is evolving. Another larger type conversation I'd like to discuss with the board is the use of the Gralsberg and CCI grant. We have them being used in the LLADs, and I would like to have a discussion regarding that, because the Gralsberg is a fantastic resource for the district, and the LLADs do have their own funding, and we have struggled in the past with balancing our budget, dealing with, finally being able to contribute to our reserves. And so I'm thinking on Growlsburg that we may want to not use them in the LLADs and use them instead on district properties, especially when some of the LLADs we have are well funded. Now, I fully recognize that most of the LLADs are running a negative deficit, but they're all going to have to be addressed at some point. So I'm wanted to ask my fellow board members on their thoughts on using Growlsburg just on our district properties, and also hear from Parks and Rec as well. Hear from Mike on his thoughts on that, and likewise for hearing from Fire on Sherry on the CCI grant also being used on LLADs that are fully funded. Perhaps those funds would be better again served on district properties instead of the LLADs that do have their own funding. So those are my comments, and I'd like to hear from my fellow board members about that.
Okay, so there's a few questions in that. Let's address that last one first. The idea of using Growlersburg. Who would like to speak to that first? General Manager Mike?
This Director Carlson, I'll just say those are some really good points to think about. So I really appreciate Director Scobie bringing them up. I'm not going to lay down an opinion one way or another because I do want to hear from staff on this for sure. But I think those are some really excellent points for us to think about at the high level. So thank you.
I appreciate the thoughts too. I really like to hear from Mike. It may simply be that it was more convenient to put them on a project for one of those lighting districts than one of our parks. But I think Mike, I'm trusting Mike's judgment on that. What was the rationale that he used?
Let's give Mike and Sherry then a chance to answer this question.
Yeah,
Mike?
I can go ahead and start. So a couple of areas where we do utilize Growlersburg on the LLADs. The main one would be Cameron Valley. It's up off of Meter Road in Auburn Hills area over in that section. And one of the reasons being is because it is an LLAD that has very limited resources and funding. So it is a great way to be able to utilize, a full crew out there on the side of the road and get a lot of work done for, $220 a day. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is when we do a lot of work on district open space properties, that's only a chunk out of the year. Normally by the time we're getting into summer or the real rainy season, we're not really in the open spaces for a lot of reasons. One is that, the majority of the areas are already taken care of. And then there is also a big fire hazard running chainsaws. We try to kind of limit where we are. We don't burn it all this time of year. And so getting the chipper back to some of those open spaces can be challenging. And we don't want to leave piles of debris in the summertime that are just piled up. So strategically, it's tough on the open spaces. And then in actual district properties, park properties, so like the general fund parks, for instance, Crystal McCullough, Cameron Park Lake, Rasmussen, as much as I love the inmates in Growlersburg working there, it is logistically tricky because those projects usually take a lot of staff time, district staff away from our normal duties to have a big park project, because we have the public to deal with that are using the parks while these projects are going on. We have several trailers, chippers, all the equipment that goes out to the parks. So it can easily tie up 3 or 4 staff for that entire day, which during the summer, especially right now, is really, really difficult to do. To where when we are working out on LLADs, roadways especially, we're not dealing with a lot of the public. We don't have to have as many staff members there because the projects are really straightforward and it is convenient. So I guess those are kind of the quick highlights is kind of our thought process behind where we utilize Growlersburg.
Mike, it's proximity to schools too, right?
Some of the LLADs, definitely proximity to schools, we don't put them out, but that also presents an issue with Krista McCullough as well. Putting the crews out there when Camerado and Blue Oak School are in full session. There's a lot of moving parts that have to come into place. We don't just set the the Growlersburg crews out there with one captain and let them do their thing. It takes a lot of district resources to make some of these projects happen.
So, is there a way that, so are you saying that it is for district, for using Growlsburg on district properties, there's a kind of like a limited time frame of how often and where we can use them? Is there a way we can like have them work on weekends or something near the schools?
No.
There's no opportunity for
And you
that?
can use them. You can use them on schools when there's not school in session. It's actually CDCR is who determines where they can work. It's really up to the Parks and Recreation on how many people they want to commit. I mean, we have a fire captain that is perfectly capable of running a crew, but we always want at least one person on site for our projects that can, kind of make sure that we're doing exactly what you're looking for.
Mhm.
I think that what has really changed, what has happened lately is that we have the grant funding, and that has freed up the crews to do work in other locations because we are hiring private contractors to do a lot of the work on the open spaces, specifically the parks and the CSD property. So we know that that's pretty much over. So next year, for our open spaces and everything, it's going to fall back on the crews.
Mike,
That is
may
a
I
good
say
point. Sherry.
something?
Yeah.
The Chamber of Commerce wants to have that Thunder in the Park, which is that huge car show at Cameron Park Lake, but they're not going to have it until October. But will everything be?
Director Wooten?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. That would be something that you could probably bring up in matters to and from.
In matters to what?
Matters to and from, where we need to keep focused on budget at this point.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to speak to Sherry's question real quick, she does make a good point. We did have a lot of resources with the CCI grants this year, and we kind of have set the standard for areas like Royal Park and Gateway, where the fire breaks now are a lot larger than they used to be. And it is going to take a certain amount of staff and manpower to be able to keep that, keep those areas kind of where we set that standard. So I can anticipate, a lot more use of the Growlersburg crews on open space properties next year. So that will tie up some of the time. But areas like Cameron Valley and some of the LLADs, we can get away with just having the captain and one staff member because of the park site. Some of the location, I should say, some of the park sites where we're getting into more like woodworking stuff or painting projects, which we love to use the crews on that kind of stuff too. It does tie up, there's a whole other level of planning and, logistics to pull those ones off.
And is it safe to say that the work that's been done to this point, Mike, actually sets us up for more efficient upkeep?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Thinking of the work at Gateway and Royal Park and all that.
Yep, it is going to take more staff and crew hours and days to be able to maintain that level of where we've kind of set the bar now, for sure.
But it'll be easier next time because we've.
Oh, for sure. Yep. Yeah, we won't have to. Yeah, the level of mastication and stuff that we just went through won't.
Yeah.
It'll be all crew work from this point on.
Okay. Director Scobie, did that answer the questions on Growlersburg use?
Yeah, that was great information. Thank you, guys. So then maybe I'd want to rephrase my question. Maybe it would be useful to direct our staff to make the best utilization possible on our district properties of those. And I realize it takes a little more time, but the Growlsburg crew is such a fantastic resource that I think if we can utilize them as much as possible on district properties first, and if that's not possible, then on our LLADs, I'm just thinking of that as a kind of like a guideline. Now, perhaps we're already doing that. I think you probably are because there's not a whole lot I read in the report, but I'm just throwing it out there that I just realize what a fantastic resource they are. And I think on district properties, it would be appropriate to use them there first.
And I can definitely take all that in consideration. There are areas like Northview where we do put Growlersburg that is not hurting for funding. And so I can take a look at, maybe we can redirect some of those resources and use some of the funding that Northview would have to take care of. I see where you're going with it, Director Scobie. So I will, it's good advice. Yeah.
And then the same with the CCI grant, although I know that funding is running out. And if there's any potential to use any remaining funds on district properties first is what I'm recommending, and, you know, help out our LLADs if we cannot use them on district property is what I'm suggesting.
And moving forward, I know Jill, myself, and Jed and Jessica talked about the CCI grant, and so I think that's our plan moving forward.
Perfect.
Mike, then I have just a question. If there is a well-funded lighting district and they need some work done, do they compensate your crew, or do they privately contract, or how is that done?
In regards to using Growlersburg, or just
if
in
you're
general?
replacing Growlersburg, yeah, and how would that happen?
Yeah, I'd probably just allocate a budget line item to maintain the open space, whether it falls wherever it falls. But yeah, it'd be a subcontractor that would come in.
Not
like
your crew, but you'd put it out there for a sub. Okay.
Yeah, kind of like we used some different tree companies for the CCI grant. It would be kind of the same thing in the LLADs. Really,
I wouldn't like to see the Growlersburg crew go because they're very affordable.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah.
Director Aston, I want to acknowledge that Barbara has her hand up.
Yes, I have seen that and wanted to make sure we
Okay.
got questions out first, but I'll call on Barbara here in just a second. Want to make sure we cover that. One correction though, Director Scobie, you made a comment when we were talking about LLADs in the midst of this. Want to make sure it's clear that it is most of the LLADs are not running a deficit. There are some that are and some that are minor deficits, but they're not going to impact their balances significantly for the work that we did in that. There's only a couple that we really have to address. So just want to make sure it's clear both for you and the rest of the board that most of the LLADs are in good shape.
Yeah, I was just looking at the bottom line on the engineer's report that, yeah, they're not going to run out of money for 10 years. I acknowledge that, but they're still running at a deficit. I mean, when we get there, we can, on that. So I don't want to relate that. What about hearing comments on splitting the utilities, the gas and electric, and trying to not change funding places and allocations going forward? Or minimize it. I mean, I know it needs to be done, but try to minimize it to help us see changes year over year.
Wouldn't the electric be with the?
Christy, I would think that we could break out that line item. I think it depends on how the bills come in, but I would think that we could break out that line item. What do you think, Christina?
We would just have to do change the coding. So right now the coding 5492 is for both gas and electric. So we would have to add a new code, one for, electric and one for gas.
What happens when the solar panels kick in?
Hopefully it's a big fat zero. How's that?
Yep.
Well, and it's worth just making sure too, utilities, electric and gas, does that include propane? For the
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Then on that line too, I agree with Dr. Scobie. That's probably worth splitting out. That'll give us a much more realistic view of the impact of our solar projects.
Yeah, it would be easy enough to code, so that would, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. We can still have some questions here, but our one member of the public's been waiting a while. I'd like to go ahead and let Barbara inject her questions or comments here. We can come back to the board and go back and forth a little on this. There's a lot of material to cover here. So if we can unmute Barbara, I'd love to hear from her.
I'm very patient,
Thank you, Barbara.
I am.
It is the budget meeting, right?
I tell people that all day long at my job, patience a virtue. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for finally establishing reserves. please. Thank you. I've been waiting for this for how many years? 17, I think. 17.
Time.
We did have reserves years ago, way back. And then it was after 89 burned, in fact, the station. And anyway, long story short, whoever the auditor was that they brought in at that time said, let's just take all the reserves and put them in the general fund. So that's when a lot of us, when there was a bigger group, started chasing the money. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Okay. Realizing that I want to make sure that we cover everything that we need to here, but also want to do this efficiently. So in the past, we've gone through each section. I'm not sure if that is going to be helpful tonight, or if we can just continue to open up for the directors for any particular questions in particular sections of this budget.
I think we should do the second approach.
Okay. Are the rest of the directors okay with that? Just open it up for questions on particular sections, and you can chime in if somebody else hits that section too. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue to open up any questions, comments, adjustments that you see on any sections in this budget.
I have one more comment.
Yes, Director Scobie.
So I went through the details and I kind of chewed Jill's ear off with just a couple of like comments and corrections in the descriptions. So I think she's going to get those addressed coming forward into the next. I don't think they're significant. So just wanted to let you know that some of the descriptions need some corrections.
Anything else?
For example, if you look at the budget detail for the Recreation Department, it cites that there's no property tax allocation, but that's a holdover from last year. So it's a few edits like that that we just need to go in and clean up.
It does reflect it in the rollout.
Yeah, the numbers are correct. It's just the supporting budget detail doesn't support that. So oversight by staff.
Thank you for catching that. Showing staff.
Yeah, Monique is good at that.
Another one I brought forward was the CC&R didn't have any insurance. I think you're going to chase that down. No.
Yeah, all of the insurance right now is in our fixed cost. So that's why it's not in any of the departments and it's in fixed cost. But I sent you an email about that. Monique. You can take a look at that too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And while Director Scobie brought up that CC&R part, I want to keep wanting to daylight all this. Is just a reminder to the board that our CC&R office budget is working on a $12 assessment that was approved in 1985 and has not changed since. That's troublesome. We'll be able to address that in the future. Just want to make sure we're keeping that in front of us.
And yet it's out of our scope, I believe. Yeah.
Simply highlighting and daylighting what.
Yep.
All right.
Just to give a different perspective though, with the values going up of real estate, the revenues coming in our property taxes is going to be pretty significant in the next year or two. And that it doesn't look so bad if you're gaining at least in one area, even if the other is kind of stagnant.
Well, the only problem with that is CC&R is a restricted fund. It can only fund CC&R. So.
But aren't we pulling deficit funding for that?
No,
we're transferring funds to cover that, aren't we?
CC&R is funded straight from CC&R and CC&R only.
And it has its own balance of a couple $100,000 that I believe that's where the money is being pulled from. It's not the general fund. It's a CC&R's own kind of savings account, if you will.
You're right, Kurt. You're right.
Could you better explain that, maybe, Jill?
Yeah, certainly. So like CC&R has a dedicated special tax assessment. LLADs are for a specific neighborhood. Those lighting and landscape districts are with a specific neighborhood, but the CC&R assessment, as you know, everybody in Cameron Parks pays that $12 assessment.
Right.
There was a number of years where the district didn't fully spend the assessment. And so for a number of years, probably in the early 80s and into the 90s, the district didn't spend it all their money. So they accumulated kind of a balance in, it's called Fund 2. So the general fund is Fund 1, the CCNR fund is Fund 2. So balance accumulated, but in probably starting about 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, due to cost escalating. So your assessments has stayed the same, but your salaries have escalated, your legal fees have escalated.
Yeah.
All of that. So with that escalation, we are now spending not only the entire assessment, but you are also spending a little bit of that savings account, as Dr. Carlson said as well. So it's this year, if you look at our CCNR budget, I think it went into the fund balance by about $9,000.
Right.
But if $200,000 is pretty small, but at some point, it's an item that needs to be addressed. There was a request made that the staff come to the CCNR committee to talk about revenue enhancements for that fund, and we'll be doing that.
Okay, thank you. Lenny.
Thank you, Joe.
It's worth adding to that, Director Bowes, that part of the reason that fund balance is important to maintain is legal potential issues. If there are larger lawsuits or legal actions that need to be taken, that gives us a fund from which to do that. Otherwise, we don't have.
Okay.
So it's not, the idea is not to just continue to drain that, as we need to keep some reserves in place because we have more litigious society now. So does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments from the board regarding our budget?
I have one more.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 46K we're sending to the reserves. Has staff decided how much is going? We have two accounts. We have the fire and we have the parks and facilities. Have you decided how you're divvying that up?
It's undesignated at this point. Christina and her staff are going to be working on the reserves and fund balances and project costs and all of that. So that information is forthcoming to the board. And so I didn't want to make, and I don't think the board wanted to make any decisions until you had a full picture of what those reserves were looking like. Also, staff is preparing some recommendations on things that need to be either repaired or maintained or replaced. And so I think you're going to want to take a look at those things too.
If this weather keeps up, I'm looking closely at fire.
So the discussion in budget and admin, Director Scobie, was that isn't a designated specific reserve, just two reserves, and then the board can make that decision at the end of the year once revenues are in, once we've pretty much got a good picture of where we're at, and we can designate that. Part of the discussion in the past has been trying to find an avenue of revenue for our parks reserves because there isn't one at this point. And that's part of the revenue enhancement they're trying to do. But that was part of the discussion, so potential for just straight to parks because fire reserve has a revenue stream.
Okay, so you think, are you saying then the committee will make a recommendation? Because I maybe I'm wrong, but I thought there was like two separate accounts that we're putting the reserves into. And so since it's a set sum, you guys are going to come forward with how much is going to go here and how much is going to go there. Is that right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, General Manager, but that would be something we would do at the end of the fiscal year. This is a placeholder in the budget.
Yeah, it's a placeholder. And when we come forward to, it's a placeholder that says this is the amount of money we're transferring out of the general fund. And so when we have a better picture of the reserves, you'll see in the reserves how much each reserve is receiving of that funding and what it's being used for.
Okay. Great.
And it wouldn't
Yay.
happen until the end of the fiscal year, or near the end of it, once everything is settled. We wouldn't just do that out of the gate.
Oh, do you anticipate, or are aware of any additional funding sources that may be coming in that are not reflected on the budget?
You mean as far as like the COVID relief funding?
Yeah, I know I don't see anything like that coming in, but do you anticipate before the final budget that we would receive any?
Oh my God, it's probably overflowing. Thank you. Okay.
I
Or-
wouldn't expect it. All applications are due for the American Rescue Funding Fund is the current pot of federal money that's been allocated to the county, and that different local agencies is trying to advocate for the state to allocate their allocation of the American Rescue Fund to special districts. So the county has requested our proposals for projects by July 31st. So I don't think that we would know if we were receiving that money before final budget. I'm going through those requirements right now. It's a 151-page federal document that does not have a table of contents.
Okay, well then
So, and I had my good friends from El Dorado Hills called me today, and they were like, what is all this? And so, we shared conversation, we shared information. I've also talked to CSDA. Also, Christina is going to be working with Ike Bailey. There is a provision for revenue replacement. I'm not an accountant, but when I read that, it was difficult for me to understand how our special district would qualify for that. And same as the other available. So I am struggling to see how we can be eligible for this funding. So looking to resources to help me.
Okay, thank you. Really, Eric, that's all I have.
It's worth a footnote there that CSDA reported that legislator passed special COVID state budget. We're waiting on approval from the governor, so there might be some potential there. We'll see what happens. Special districts are getting some. Okay. Any other questions on any section in the budget? Or are we ready to make a motion?
Director Asen, this is Jason Epperson. I apologize, my connection's been a little glitchy, so I may have missed it, but I did not actually hear the public hearing closed.
Okay, and we would do that at this point unless there's any other questions or comments from director. Okay, we'll close the public hearing at this point. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you catching that. So public hearing officially closed. Put it to the directors. Do you have any other questions, comments, or are we ready to make a motion?
No.
This is Director Carlson. I move to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 preliminary budget.
The motion, do we have a second?
I'll make a second to that motion.
Okay, we have a second. General Manager, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Director Aston,
Aye.
Director Carlson,
Aye.
Director Bazette,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
and Director Wooten.
Aye.
Thank you, fellow directors.
Excellent again.
Preliminary budget for 2021-22. Run throughs and budget and admin, questions and adjustments. So that is a wonderful achievement. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, staff, so much for your good work on that. Really looking forward to doing this budget. Okay.
So no more national tragedies.
No, we're gonna
right.
skip that at least this year. All right, general business item number 15. We'll move on to approve resolution 2021-19. declaring the intention to continue assessments for the fiscal year 2021-22, preliminarily approving the engineer's report and providing for notice of public hearing for the landscape and lighting districts. General Manager.
Yes, so again, this is a preliminary engineer's report. You are to review it, provide us comments this evening on the assessments and the budgets, and then set a hearing date for next month. And so it'll be a public hearing next month to make final approval of the engineer's report, and that is the trigger for the assessments. There are some edits and updates that are needed in the engineer's report. Thank you, Director Scobie, for going through that, and I have provided those. The edit was like Silver Springs was added as an LLAD, and that description is in there, but in the introduction, Silver Springs was noted as a residential district. So they just need to update. Also, they had some 2020 dates in there instead of 2021. So those edits were sent over to SCI to make those changes. As far as the budgets go, there have been some changes in the budgets. And this is after a lot of work with our LLAD ad hoc committee, and then also working with our budget and administration committee, also with the finance office staff and with Mike. So there's been a lot of thought going into LLADs. I think I'm pleased that we have gotten to a point where we've been able to spend some time with them. One, we are charging an overhead allocation that will be a transfer from the LLADs to the general fund, almost $40,000 for the district support and oversight of those LLADs. Right now, it's just staff time. We haven't included things like liability insurance. We haven't included things like computers or that kind of overhead stuff, but this is our first step in that. This overhead allocation should not trigger any of the LLADs that are going to fall off the cliff. There are a couple that were already vulnerable prior to this step, but we were already in need of addressing those. Another change was that SCI, in the past, SCI costs were allocated the same over all the LLADs. And we asked SCI to take a look at how much time they spend on each
LLAD.
So those costs have also changed. So an LLAD may see an increase in the overhead allocation, but a decrease in the amount of time spent by SCI on that particular LLAD. So there are 4 LLADs that will have a zero assessment. And it's Cameron Woods 1 through 4, and it is 4, not 5. Cameron Woods 8, it is Eastwood and Air Park. And those budgets are pretty balanced, and their fund balances are very significant. And so we're recommending a zero assessment until their fund balance gets to where you have about 6 months in the bank. SCI recommended that it's standard, industry standard, to have about 6 months of operational cost in your fund balance. There are LLADs that still have some high fund balances, but they're operating at a deficit and carving into that fund balance. And so we didn't want to stop the assessment just to ask for more money. These are LLADs that were pre-Prop 218 and they don't have an escalator. So some of the LLADs, most of them, we're keeping that fund balance because it's helping to fund the LLAD. And then let's see, there are 2 LLADs that need immediate attention. Golderado, which is the streetlights up off of Palmer, and then Northview, I think, is the other one. I could be wrong, but there's 2 that are in need of. Viewpoint is the other one. So those 2 we're going to work on as soon as I get my head above water. I'm going to meet with the partners, Marshall, Medical, also, I think the shopping center, but work with the stakeholders on Palmer Road to see if they can't help us with those streetlight costs. And I think that's it.
All right. Worth recognizing here too that this has been a process of us, staff and budget and admin and ad hoc working on these, addressing these funds, and just making sure that we're aware of what's really happening there, which ones need addressing, et cetera. So thank you. We've come to a good point in this. Appreciate your work, staff. Questions from the board of directors on this?
Director Bassett here. My question is on the parcel rate. Is it per year or is it per assessment, or how is that charged?
So if you go to table, it's called table 19. And the third column is the assessment levy. That's the amount of revenue that is generated from in that assessment district. And then the number of parcels is the number of homes or parcels that are within that neighborhood. So it's the assessment you pay on your property taxes, and it is an annual assessment.
Okay, that was my answer, my question. So
Yeah.
that goes out with your regular tax bill. Okay.
It does. And most of these are without an escalator. And so it's really incumbent upon staff as these LLDs get to a deficit spending and running out of money. Before that happens, staff needs to get out and start talking to the neighborhood about what their options are. It may be changing up their landscaping. It may be turning off lights, street lights. It may be increasing the assessment. So there's some choices, and we need to work with those residents to figure out what that is.
Okay, thank you.
And worth noting too, I know it's in the report, but we'll want to keep an eye next year for David West because they've reached their cap assessment. And we already know that we are providing some support with David West because of our use of the field, but we want to make sure that the district's not taking on more of that in the future than necessary. Any other questions from directors before we go to the public?
No, I don't think so.
I have some questions.
Shelby.
All right, so thank you, Jill. Jill and I went through that together, and thank you for addressing those comments that I had on some various corrections. One of the other questions that I did not get a chance to ask was on that final table. I'm on the engineer's report, table 22, which is pretty much the budget and expenditures and fund balance for all the LLADs, which I think is fantastically organized and easy to consume. But in general, it says total assessments collected, all of them have a positive number under revenues. And given that we have some that are zero, I'm just curious, maybe when you come back, you can explain why some of them have revenue when we're not charging a special assessment. And the reason why I'm asking that is because interest is called out on another line. So I'm just curious. I just want to make sure I understand the report. Furthermore, I want to say thank you to staff for daylighting this. The amount of money that we have assigned for administration costs of $40,000 is very low. The amount of effort that staff, the board, the committees have spent administering these LLADs are fully, we spend far more resources on these than that we are billing to these LLADs. And I do think that getting an accurate reporting of what staff is spending on these is crucial. So I look forward as, Jill explained that, this is a first cut, and I think that's great, and I'm fine to go forward with that. But I do look forward to kind of digging in and making sure that everything is equitable for the district and for the LLADs, and that they are being able to cover their costs. So I'm just really, I'm just amazed that this has been something that's been, you know, when I first started on the board, this, you know, it wasn't really daylighted. And now I just really want to thank staff for bringing this forward, and the amount of time Mike spends managing these things. It's mind-boggling. So I look forward to seeing, you know, further digging in and getting accurate assessments of what the district actually pays to administer these LLADs.
And that's a follow-up question, Jill. In terms of that fiscal year estimate of cost, it does list the assessments collected for revenue. Is that something we need to adjust if we're not actually going to collect those?
So I'm looking at table 22 on page 38. Is that where you are?
Yes.
Okay. And so I'm looking at Air Park, and I see the total assessment is at $1,500. So I think that that's what Director Scobie is asking about, is why is there that little bit of money? And so each one of them that has a zero assessment has a little bit of money, and I'm not sure why that is.
Yep, that's my question.
Okay, was that your question, Director Eason?
Yep.
Yes, yes, to just
Okay.
highlight that. So that's Air Park, Cameron Woods, and yeah, Cameron Woods 1 through 5, and or sorry, you said 1 through 4, and then 8.
Mhm.
So Fund 47. So yeah, each of them has a small amount relative to their regular budget. In total assessments collected or other.
Yeah, so I'll ask Arcelia about that and we can get an answer.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions from the directors before I go open this up to the public?
Oh, I have one more.
Okay.
I think it's important that now that we're digging into these LLADs, that we let our community know what we're doing. In other words, we have 4, if I have my number right, LLADs where we have adjusted their taxes down. I think that's worth an article. I think that's worth commenting and letting our people know, our community know that, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing here. You know, we don't need to charge you, so we're not. And it also allows us to get some input into those who are in trouble, and that they are, you know, you may be in this good one where things are great, or you may not be. And I think it's important that we daylight that and tell our community, because it's something that we're going to need to address. And I think this is a great opportunity, especially when we have good news to share.
Thank you, Director Scobie. Well put. And I agree.
I agree too.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the board before we open to public? Okay, seeing none, I'll open this up for public comment. Anybody who'd like to make a comment, go and raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, go ahead and close public comment at this point. Bring it back to the board. We've asked our questions on this. Is there any other comments before we take action on this?
I think so.
Would you like to make a motion?
Are we ready to make a motion?
Would anybody like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-19, declaring the intention to continue assessments for the fiscal year 2021-22, preliminary approving engineers report, and providing for notice of public hearing for the landscaping lighting districts.
I'll second the motion.
And to make sure directors understand, this is a notice for public hearing. We'll visit this again in July. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. General Manager, we can make a roll call, please.
Director Eason,
Aye.
Director Carlson,
Aye.
Director Bazette,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Wooten.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you, directors. And now we move to item number 16. This is to elect a member to the California Special District Association and Board of Directors for the Sierra Network, of which we are.
Eric, sorry, I want to interrupt for a minute. We've been meeting for an hour and a half. I just wonder if we should maybe have a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
I'll put that to directors if you'd like to do that. We're on our last general business item and then to committees and board information. If you'd like to take a break now, I'm happy to facilitate that.
I think a break would be good.
I do too.
Okay, then we will take a short recess. We'll say about 5-6 minutes. Is that sufficient time? 10 minutes? What do we need?
10 minutes.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
It is 7:58. If we can pause the recording.
Pause the recording, yeah.
Not stop it, but pause it at this point, and then we will resume it in 10 minutes. I will keep track of that, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Oh.
You figured out the pause key? Yeah, don't stop.
Okay, we are resuming our meeting, the Cameron Parks Board, or Cameron Parks CSD Board. All right, we're picking back up on our agenda with general business item number 16. This is to elect a member to California Special District Association Board of Directors, Sierra Network, of which we are a part of. So, General Manager.
So last year we were able to get this to the Budget and Admin Committee for them to make a recommendation to the full board. But from the time I received it, and then also when it's due back, I'm unable to do that. So you have 3 candidates here. I know 2 of them. Noel Maddock is the incumbent from El Dorado Hills, very knowledgeable person, and has been with El Dorado Hills for quite some time. Patrick Larkin is with Cordova Recreation and Park District, also a very knowledgeable person. He's been at several different special districts in the Sacramento area. And then Scott Holbrook is with Auburn Recreation and Park District.
Okay. So we'll open this up for questions or comments with our board. Does anybody have any questions for the general manager regarding these applicants?
This is Monique.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say I don't have any questions.
Duly noted.
And Director Asen, we can do this however you'd like. If people give me their top 2 candidates, I could take a tally if you'd like me to do that.
That might be a simpler way to do it. We want to open it up, public comment, before we get there. Unless there's questions, we want to do questions, public comment, and then bring it back for discussion. So unless there's any questions from our board, just the reminder of making sure we understand context for this. CSDA, the California Special Districts Association, the Sierra Network represents our region. So these folks cycle in and out, represent us. And CSDA has done a lot of good work for us this last year in particular. So we really want to send the good people there. Unless there's other questions, I'll open it up to comments from the public. So Barbara, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for discussion. So fellow directors, do you want to do a general manager suggested, do a 1, 2, 3 ranking, a 1, 2 ranking, see where we're at?
I'd like to just make a quick comment. I'm fine with that approach, but I just make a quick comment about the candidates and kind of my thought.
Mhm.
I think we all know it has been an extraordinary past year, and chances are it'll be an extraordinary coming year, just between the fallout on the pandemic and kind of all the unpredicted economic and otherwise consequences that seem to be happening. So having looked through their bios, I actually was thinking that the general manager might be a really strong candidate, having that on the ground budget experience, and I think might be really good kind of fresh perspective on the board. So that's my 2 cents, although with inflation, it's worth less than it used to be, but there you go.
Any other comments for discussion?
I'm fine with the first 2 candidates. Either of those are fine with me.
Okay. It's worth noting, just for some perspective too, there's 6 representatives in the Northern Network. Let me go back to this. There's 3 representatives in the Sierra Network. I was looking at the wrong page. And just for perspective, we have 1 general manager and 2 board members currently serving on the CSDA for the Sierra Network. So just putting that with Director Carlson's comment about that it might be good in this cycle to have a general manager who is in the midst of all that, speaking into it. There's a case for both elected positions and staff positions being in that. So put that into our consideration as well. So do we want any other comments, or do we want to proceed with a ranking?
A recommendation?
I think that with Felicity and Eric's comments, that perhaps one of you guys could make a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion. I move to, I don't know if the word elect is right, but elect Patrick Larkin. Yeah, the general manager of the Cordova Recreation and Park District to the CSDA Board of Directors, Sierra Network.
That was Patrick Larkin, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion for our board's nomination or election vote to be for Patrick Larkin in Cordova Recreation. Do we have a second for that?
Well, I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. General Manager, would you take roll call vote?
Director Easton?
Aye.
Director Carlson?
Aye.
Director Bazette?
Aye.
Director Scobie?
Aye.
And Director Wooten, you're muted. If you could unmute yourself and tell me your vote.
Aye.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay. All right, so passed 5-0, we vote to elect Patrick Larkin from Cordova Recreation Park District to the CSDA Board of Directors.
What is his full name?
Patrick Larkin. Don't know the middle name. Okay. Thank you, directors, for that. So we finished our general business. Now we'll move into the board information items. And we will start with our committee chair report outs. And I would start with me with budget and admin. And not much to report other than most of what we've done tonight. So you've seen most of our work this last month and there. Director Carlson, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I agree with you. I think that most if not all of what we've done has basically appeared before the entire board this evening.
And it's worth just saying, I said it before, but I want to say it again. I have really appreciated the process we've been through these last 2-3 months, getting to this point, particularly with budget and audit. And just, I'm grateful for the process we've been in, the back and forth with staff to coming to a really good place with us. So thank you all for that. Okay, let's move on to CC and Rs.
Okay.
From there.
Well, we've had very good responses on the door hangers, homeowners have have been responsive to contact the CCNR to work toward any type of compliance that was on their little hangers on the door. The other thing is, I'd like to see, and Sid, listen closely, the CCNR office would like to find a way to bring the Real Estate Association back to the CSD hall for their meetings. This would give the CCNR officer the opportunity to educate and update real estate firms and agents about the CCNRs, as well as any new laws or changes to the community. The last thing is we have the welcome wagon. And with the help of the Real Estate Association, the CPCSD and the CCNR office would like to start preparing a package for new homeowners in Cameron Park. The package would include the neighborhood CCNRs for that property, a pamphlet on the CCNRs and why they are required for each resident, a park map with the amenities of Cameron Park, the Recreation Department's biannual brochures and schedules, and any other information that would benefit new homeowners. And that's about it for me.
Director Scobie is chair of the committee. Is there anything else you wanted to report on that?
Yeah, Ellie brought that forward in the meeting and was well received. So we're going to be revisiting that, and I liked her providing those updates. So thank you, Ellie. We have had 2 sticky CCNR issues. One on
Royal Park.
I'm not including that one. That one's like beyond.
Oh, okay.
The sticky ones we have, one of them is on Knollwood, and we've actually assigned 2. We've had 2 of our CCNR committee members have volunteered to work with staff to help come to a resolution, because it's come back to the committee a couple of times, because we're really trying to work with the homeowner and make things work and have everybody up to speed and work with our staff and so forth. So hopefully that'll get resolved in our next committee meeting. So that one is on Knollwood. The other one we've had is on Archwood, and that one's another sticky one. And it looks like there might be some progress being made, and hopefully I don't know, maybe Jill would be better to provide more information on that one, but we are working with that homeowner as well. Other than that, I mean, Ellie covered the rest of it.
Okay. Any questions for fellow directors for CCNR committee? Okay. We'll move next to Fire and Emergency Services. Director Bazette, you chair that one.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, and it's hard to remember it all, but I think the tower being completed was the big item. Are you there, Sherry? Or no? Or do we have any of our fire people here?
Yes, Sherry is there. She's unmuting.
Okay. No, the one thing I do want to share was I was very impressed with the integration of fire and police in the San Jose shooting, and I really got so Sherry's put me in touch with a lieutenant with the sheriff's office, and apparently they do have training and they do have that integration, and it hasn't happened this year because of COVID, but I'm going to be invited when that actually happens. So that was something I had a particular interest in for emergency services, because I think it is one of those things that we have to practice, and we don't have time to create those things when you have those things happen. You need to be prepared for it. Anything else, Sherry?
No, I just want to echo the tower. It is a few weeks out, but people are really commenting on it because you can see it from a long ways away. And I know the other fire agencies, I have meetings with them all the time, and they're really excited about doing some multi-agency training there. So it's still a few weeks out, and we're planning to do a little open house like we did with the fire engine. And like I said, have a couple of you guys hanging off the side of the building and all that stuff. So it'll be fun.
You need a flag on the top, Sherry.
Monique and
Yeah.
Ellie.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, Monique for sure.
I'll just remind our directors, our insurance went up significantly this year, so don't go any further. Sherry, I'll ask, was there anything in the CCI grant presentation from Jed that's worth bringing forward?
I'm sorry, I heard CCI grant
Was there anything in the CCI grant presentation from Chief Gaines that's worth bringing forward?
I think just all the accomplishments. I mean, he was able to kind of spell out where the money went, but it was really a good snapshot of all of the, the incredible work that's been done out there. Specifically, I'm going to say on the district properties. And then of course, Pine Hill Preserve is just been amazing. And BLM is such a great partner, and they're so, appreciative and thankful for what we've been able to help them out with this grant funding. And truly it's just to help, protect the citizens of Cameron Park is what it's really doing. Because if anybody's ever been out really taking time to look at that, the homes are just butted right up against manzanita that's, 8 feet, 10 feet tall. And so
True.
it's pretty amazing. And we're actually working on that 200, starting to go into the 200-foot clearance. So yeah, the grant, we're towards the end of it. And then we've got a plan to spend, some of it to get flyers out next spring. And so it's pretty much all spoken for, but it was a tremendous success.
I just wanted to comment. We talked about the mailing and the things going home and how we can, the education part of the grant and what ways in which we can most effectively reach our communities. So I think that's an ongoing question, is how, the mailers are one, but are there other ways that we can draw attention to some of the fire issues? And just one thing that struck me in our discussion was mowing your lawn in the afternoon when it's hot and dry is just quite dangerous. And so anyway, just some of the causes of some of the fires and how do we get that information out to our community?
We are getting just so you guys know, I'm not exaggerating when I say almost every day we're getting a lawnmower caused fire around the Amador and El Dorado County. They're mowing in the afternoon. It's hot, it's dry, and we send this message, every year constantly. You'll see CAL FIRE signs out there that have that message, mow before 10 o'clock, make sure you have water and a tool and all that. So I know when we wrote this grant, we were successful when no one else in the county was. If you guys recall, we got that $336,000, but we had to articulate on the prevention side what we plan to do. And a lot of it was the mailers, because the demographics, the older demographics of the community that isn't on social media and isn't on the internet as much. And so we really focused on those mailers, but we also focused on the in-person kind of stuff where we're putting up, pop-ups and going to all these community things. And of course, we know what happened last year, so we weren't able to do that. I hope we can do a little bit of that this spring, but we'll be looking for another grant to apply for.
Yeah, I think it's just an ongoing topic. How do we educate our community?
Yeah.
So always looking for ideas.
The committee recommended that the presentation be provided to the board, and so you'll see that in July.
Wonderful. All right. I'll hold some of those questions until then. Great. Any other updates, Sherry, on Station 88?
So Station 88, we have a design, which I think is, I think I mentioned at fire committee, maybe the prior board, but originally we were looking at remodeling the current building, and we actually have a design where when you pull into the parking lot, there's going to be a building at the back of the parking lot that's going to provide 4 bedrooms. So there'll be 3 bedrooms and a battalion chief quarters, which of course we don't have a battalion chief quarters. Our battalion chiefs are currently staying at Diamond Springs Fire Station right now, and which they're graciously providing that for us, and have been for the last couple of years. So this will provide that, and we actually find out it's actually going to be cheaper to do that put a new structure than it is to actually knock out walls and remodel 88. So we have a really good design. Everybody's happy. It won't displace our fire crews. Like I was thinking, what are we gonna do with these guys for literally it's gonna be like 9 months and looking at renting a place, can't put them at 89 the whole time. So this is actually just really come together nicely. The one thing we're working on right now is getting this with the surveyor, making sure this just one setback. We're double checking a setback between the building and Cameron Park Drive. And then once that's done, we'll go out to bid and see what what comes back on what that'll cost. And then I'll put together the justification like I did with the tower. That'll come to the board here, then it'll go to the county, and then to access those mitigation fees.
Thanks for the update. Okay, unless there's anything else from Fire and Emergency Services Committee, we'll move on to Parks and Rec. Director Carlson, you're chairing that.
Yeah, so a couple things that first of all, Rasmussen Park received a categorical exemption from, I believe it's a CEQA document. So basically what that means is that Rasmussen Park, it turns out is a marsh. So keep that in mind whenever we have flooding issues around Rasmussen Park. It was a marsh, and many years ago, the Cameron Park community filled it in with about 3 feet of dirt and made a couple baseball diamonds. So because that, if there was anything of a sensitive nature, historically or nature-wise, the damage has already been done. This is my understanding. This is my unprofessional understanding. So therefore, Cameron, we don't have to go through and obtain special permits to do the improvements that we hope will have the funding to do eventually in Rasmussen Park. So for me, it was interesting to learn it's a marsh. And the second thing that was of interest was we discussed business operations in parks, and there's just a tiny little incident of a business operating in the parks, and we wanted to make sure that that's kind of fair for residents. Like if that is keeping residents off of a facility so that somebody can earn some money. I don't know if they're a resident or not, and I don't know if they're clients or residents or not, but it brought up a discussion of Jill pulled out an ordinance from 2001 that's pretty lengthy, and it's got a lot of what you cannot do in our parks. So we do have an existing ordinance. There's no ordinance against doing business in our parks specifically, but I'm bringing this up because the discussion is that we really probably should update that ordinance, but that is going to be quite a project in and of itself. It's not just like a committee can do it in a couple meetings. It's going to take public comment and iterations and some back and forth. But given that Cameron Park is, well, it's been 20 years since that ordinance was passed, which I don't think is really that long, but Cameron Park is developing, and we're getting, as some of you have already noted, more residents are moving here that have never lived here before. It'd probably be a good idea to update the ordinance. So, I know you're all excited to get involved with that. So look forward to having that on the radar in the next year or two. All right. And so those for me were the main items from the Parks and Rec meeting. If Sid or Mike Grassley have anything you want to add, please do.
Well, I was a part of that discussion too about people running a business with our parks and so forth. So I had requested that of Jill. It was interesting, just the things that were mentioned were like explosives and rockets, but they're things that didn't exist, like drones and sound systems and so forth, that are really very real situations right now. And so it's going to have to be updated. And then actually Mike was talking about the model airplanes and things that are not supposed to be happening there at the Cameron Park Lake because the airport's right there. So it just was an interesting discussion all the way around, but we found out there's a lot more work to it than we had realized. So it's one of those putting off till next year.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what the committee said that's pretty much the gist of it. But so everyone knows that drones are not allowed at Cameron Park Lake due to the proximity of the airport. And so we've had to actually regulate that and stop that kind of stuff out there. So just FYI, we've had the airport bring it up to us before.
How common is that, Mike?
It probably happens maybe a handful times a year. I think it's happened 3 or 4 times the last 2 years or so. And it's just because people don't know.
Yeah.
So,
But it's not actually in our policy, in that policy statement, there's nothing about drones because they didn't exist.
and then like disc golfers sometimes will bring drones out to take aerial footage of stuff, and it's just not the place where we can be doing that.
Any other questions from the board for Parks and Rec? Any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that interesting comment about the drones. So at the last summer spectacular, which is hard to imagine was going on almost 2 years ago, there were drones flying around because we could see them with their lights. So we thought they were cool at the time, but now I don't. So we might want to, when we do our summer spectacular a year from now, then we might want to actually address that and put that out there clearly, because they were taking pictures and they were kind of fun to watch. I thought but you know, you're right. The airport's right there. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I'm also concerned about the privacy issues and the quiet enjoyment of a park when you've got something buzzing over the top of you. So there's all of our parks, it's an issue at some point we have to address.
Well, I suppose Parks and Rec Committee can make a stab and bring it to the board. We can decide how to deal with the drones. The drones are coming.
Okay. Thank you, Parks and Rec Committee. Appreciate your work on that. Our last committee report out is from the General Manager Recruitment Ad Hoc Committee. That would be Director Carlson and myself. So, Director Carlson, do you mind if I just give the brief overview and you can step in?
I'll set you straight after you do the brief. I'm just joking, Eric. Go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So the brief summary at this point is, since we have last met, Director Carlson and I met with our representatives at MRG to work through the promotional material to advertise and recruit for the general manager. Went through a few different versions of it. They started with the 2017 version. Of course, here's your template, and went through a few revisions of that with pictures and content and focus. And Director Carlson, correct me if I'm wrong, but we felt pretty good about the ending product and what was getting out, both to represent our community and to target the skills, the kind of person that we're looking for to come here. General enough that it'll hit a broad stroke of people, but specific enough that it'll meet our needs. And so that started out, the outreach started on June 1st. And as of the week ending June 11th, we got a little report on where we're at with this. Job postings and advertisements were placed in a number of places, including the California Parks and Recreation Profession Service website, with the National Recreation and Park Association, with the California Special Districts Association, and the Municipal Management Association of Northern California. So, as well as Indeed, just as a general job posting. Along with that, Director Carlson was good to catch this, posted at California State University, Sacramento, doing some focused alumni outreach. So looking for people who are in the area too. So a good broad area of putting that out. We had, as of June 11th, there were 25 candidates that had applied.
Oh.
Yeah. And out of that, 3 candidates met the minimum requirements. So
Hey, it's better than it could be.
Well, and that's just the first week plus of that going out. So it takes a few days to get out, and then people start applying. And it's not surprising. That's probably not an uncommon proportion because people are trying to get jobs, and there you go. But I'm encouraged by that as we've still got another half a month of them coming in. So there's targeted efforts in that and trying to get a diverse pool of candidates. So what happens now is they're not reviewing the applicants at this point. It's simply open until June 28th, which is when the first review of applicants will happen. And so that's when MRG will reconnect with Dr. Carlson and myself to report, here's what we have. Depending on the number of candidates that will come to us, we might do a first level screening to whittle that down. And that's when we will set up a timeline for first level interviews and begin setting the timeline for setting up panels for interviews as well. It's worth noting that in the advertisement, what we did was we decided to have instead of a cutoff date for applications, what we listed was a first review date. And so what that means is as June 28th, they'll be going through the applications and resumes, and we'll be moving on it at that point, but the posting is still open. So if a week or two into July, as we're processing this, all of a sudden there's a candidate that pops up, wow, we need to pay attention to this person, they can still move into the process. So it gives us a little more of a window to find some candidates, at the same time beginning to move forward at the beginning of July. So that's the overview report. Director Carlson, anything you want to add to that?
Just no, perfect. Thank you so much. Just that given, I just feel like we are in such a weird environment. Everything's so unpredictable right now. I know it's really hard to hire staff at a variety of levels. So I'm actually really pleased with the results so far. That's all I have to add.
Okay. Any questions from our fellow directors?
No.
Good job. I'm excited.
We are too. So we've got another couple plus weeks with that being out there, and then we'll see what comes. And we'll have some report for you at least by the next meeting. We might have to send out some word before that if we have to start setting up schedules of interviews, depending on how many candidates come in. But my anticipation is that won't happen until we report at the next board meeting. Okay. All right. With that, then we'll move on to general matters to and from board members and staff. We've covered a lot of territory tonight. I'll start with staff. Anything else to report? Just to put it out to Jill, Christina, Mike, Sherry, anything else to report?
Yeah, I've started outreach for our strategic plan. Fire Safe Council, we're meeting with the Fire Safe Council later on this month. Sherry and I are going to do that, roll out our strategic plan. I've also been in touch with Rotary and also the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm hopeful that July, August timeframe will reach out to a few of these groups and present our strategic plan. And I think Director Asen was going to write something up for the general manager's column in Cameron Park Live too. So so that, and then I'll just, while I've got the floor, I'll jump in on the solar. We do have a delay on our solar project of 1 to 2 weeks. Transporting the steel, the stanchions, takes a special trucking company to do that because of the length of the stanchions, and they are unable to meet our construction start date. So we've got a delay of 1 to 2 weeks. The PG&E interconnection also has been delayed. I saw some email traffic though as well. It's not a big issue. It's a little issue. So it's not, so they're still working through that, but there has been a delay, and they're working with PG&E to resolve that delay with the interconnection. And Mike, anything? We're going to get a revised construction timeline. So
I don't think anything else on the solar end. Just so everyone knows, I will be out of the office starting this coming Monday, the 21st, through July 6th. My brother's getting married and we're going to Cabo for 10 days. So
On a boat.
Congratulations.
Oh,
On a slow boat.
yeah.
I've never heard of the slow boat to Cabo. Wonderful.
All I got, Eric.
We hope that's a good time for you, Mike. You've earned
Yeah. Thank you.
that. All right. Anything else from staff? Okay, seeing none, let's go to directors. Anything to report? Director Wooten, any matters to and from?
I managed to say what I wanted to say.
Okay, wonderful. Director Scobie.
Okay, I have my laundry list. So here we go. Okay, so my first question actually is for Sherry, and that I'm going to be installing these vents that don't allow sparks into my garage, because I'm going to be installing some new vents because my garage is too hot. And that got me thinking about our Firewise community. And I was wondering if you'll be bringing forward, or staff will be bringing forward, a plan on how we're going to approach getting to be a Firewise community, and when we'd expect to see such plan.
I have to be honest, I've been busier the last few weeks than I think I've been in years. We're in like full blown fire season. So it's like right there at the top of my list. Nevada, so I actually was in a meeting a few weeks ago and I talked to one of the chiefs in our Nevada Youth Placer unit, and they have an incredible program for Firewise communities. They've got them all over. And so I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I wanted to get the gal's contact information and kind of sit down with her and just have her, and they said they would walk us all the way through it. And really, it's going to take a lot of community involvement. It's not the fire department doing it, but I could get presentation information from them to kind of educate you, the board, on the next steps. So that I did bring that up at our meeting, and they're going to get me the contact information. And yes, I did confirm also, I know I presented to you that I think I said USAA provides insurance discounts. Well, I come to find out it's most, if not all, insurance companies are giving significant insurance discounts. So it's a benefit. It does take, some work, and it does take community involvement. So I will get that info.
Great, thank you.
I just want to acknowledge too that, we're still working on this year's work plan. So, there's still a lot of things in the queue on this year's work plan. So, I think some of these initiatives in the strategic plan are going to have to be kind of, initiated in 2022. So we can get some of the stuff we're working on now done.
Okay, I acknowledge my excitement, and I may be jumping the gun.
And I think it's great.
I just get all wound up. Okay, while I have your attention, Sherry, the other thing is, we have, what other comments are you getting on the fire tower? Are you getting any complaints from local residents, or I'm sure all the fire districts are thrilled to death to see it, but what kind of comments are you getting currently?
I have not heard, and from my folks have not heard any negative comments from the public whatsoever. So the only thing that I have heard is just, like I said, a general sense of excitement and comments almost every day from my partners about this opportunity to train, have our firefighters train and become, just like everything I've told you, safer, more effective, more efficient. And if nothing else, well, most importantly, really, is just working together and knowing our equipment and everything. So I have not heard a single, I don't know. I think Jill would have told me if she's heard anything, but I have not heard anything negative about it at all.
Okay. And then the other question would be, we're going to have that tower up and running, and at some point in time, you're going to have some sort of schedule of who's using what and so forth, and hopefully any type of compensation for those. So I just didn't want that to fall off the radar for any agencies that may be using it. You know, if
No one's going to use it. We're not going to, we have to maintain control over that because there's like specific requirements for some of this training for liability with burning. And so we do have certified instructors at Cameron Park. And my direction to them is that the training is going to be, we'll be running it, and it'll be multi-company where folks come in and train with us here and there. There's a lot of the training is just going to be, you know, us doing. There's a lot of rope rescue, a lot of things. I did talk to Chief Richards, who is a rope rescue instructor, and you know, he's, you know, working to estimate some trainings that we can put on. COVID, of course, changed everything, but you know, if we just host even a class a year, I mean, you know, you're in the thousands of dollars a range, you know, just with that. So as we know, this building is tried and true. I told you the one at the Academy's been there for probably close to 30 years, and I think they've repainted it once. So there's the maintenance costs on it is very minimal. So we will plan to put, you know, reserves from trainings that we host there, and you know, use it for maintenance purposes.
Great. Okay. And then just kind of some general stuff. I have been just sharing with my board members and staff. I've been out there poking around in Pine Hill Preserve. You heard me mention that last time. I've ran into, I went over there to Rasmussen Lake. I don't know if I mentioned that there's cygnets out there. We didn't get any at the lake, but we do have cygnets at Rasmussen Lake. We also have a nesting grebe at Cameron Park Lake, which I've never seen before, and you might want to look on Nextdoor or the Cameron Park Community Foundation. I just ran into the photographer at the lake taking pictures of our baby grebes at the lake, which is, I think, is adorable. And there's tons of fishing line out at the lake. I just picked up a whole handful of it. The other thing I wanted to mention was that, you know, I went on about the LLADs. Thank you for your patience, but we did not put that in our strategic plan. So hopefully in some future work plan that will come forward on addressing that as, you know, discussed. So, and then the other thing that came up when you know, Jeff gave the update on the solar, if there's going to be a long delay, I wonder if there would be worth a long delay, maybe not 2 weeks, but if things seem to extend out and we can actually use our community center, we might want to, you know, see if we can do a short-term 1 month class or engagement or something. So just throwing it out there if it ends up being a delay, because, you know, I feel like all these things delay. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Sherry, the people who come to the existing tower, they all always pay for that. Isn't that correct?
No, we've been pretty clear from the beginning. We don't charge people to train
No,
with
I'm
us.
saying the existing tower, don't you have to pay something if you bring people over?
Our tower at 89.
Not your tower, the existing tower.
Talking about the one.
Ion or Ione, or I forget how you.
Oh, no, we don't. No, we don't charge to do that.
No, you don't, but don't they?
Other agencies?
If they bring
No.
other fire departments over there to
No, we don't.
practice and.
No. No.
I heard they
No.
did.
No, there's we have a lot of it. We will like trade instructors. Like if another agency, if Sac Metro came in and trained like for a day, they provide instruction, you know, for some of our classes because they have skill sets that can help bolster some of our training. So it's like our firing range over there. We don't, you know, we do trades. So
Ellie,
if there's something.
Okay.
Ellie, what I think you're remembering is that we said that there was a cost to the district for us to have staff travel over to Ione, because we would have to pay them for their travel time
Right.
and then we had to pay staff for that vacancy. So I think that that's what you're remembering.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you are remembering though. That's good.
Yes.
All right. Anything else, Director Scobie? That's it. Okay, Director Bazette.
Yes, with Mike's help, my Lion real estate office did a community service date on June the 11th over at Ryan Park, the dog park. And I think we had about 30 people show up, and it was just great coordination, and it was really a lot of fun. And I got to use the gas powered hedge clippers, so I all the hedges are on my watch. So I know about his tools, and they work pretty well, so I was impressed. But it was a lot of fun, and in fact, it was the first one, and it was such a popular one with that group of realtors. They talked to Mike, and I think they're looking next year, maybe Dave West or something, but that will become an annual event. And I think it was the very first community service group to come in and do this. So with COVID, so it's kind of a neat beginning, but it was such a positive for the community to be involved in the park and working together with Mike and his crew, and they were. But this is specific. Jim showed up, and I said, and just one, he said, there's a lot of realtors here. I should probably talk to them. I said, let me take you over to my manager. And I introduced her. Her name is Monica Bendetti. And Jim is scheduled next Wednesday at our meeting to do a presentations on CC&Rs and architectural review. And and we're the biggest realty firm in Cameron Park. And then pre-COVID, we used to actually meet in the community service district. All the realties did before they did their tours. I think it was on Wednesday. So when that gets back in place, then we will definitely get Jim involved. So it's something that just happened to be, timing was everything. Jim showed up, and my manager, because I approached a previous manager, had no interest. This manager was, so it's coming together. Ellie, did you get that?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right.
All right. Anything else, Director Bazette?
No, it was just, yeah, it's good to see people out there doing things. I also, I really have to compliment your leadership at the Gateway Park meeting with all the people there. And I think they really felt heard and understood better why things had to happen the way they did. But it was very, and Jill too, you did an outstanding job of dealing with all kinds of interesting people and different points of view. So I was a witness to that, and I have to compliment you both.
Thank you, Sid. And I got to tell you, I drove by the Paul J. Rand Park the day that you all were out there doing that. Saw all these people in the red shirts and working around there. And it was really fun to see, even just driving by. There was this activity and energy there. Anybody driving by would see that happening. So that was not just the work you did, but the presence that you had there for the hundreds of cars and people that came by. So
yeah. And you realize the dog park touches an awful lot of people. There's some regulars there, an awful lot of regulars who did not get to go that day.
Yep, I see them in their same chairs most days. Oh, that's great. All right, and I was gonna address the Gateway meeting when it comes around to me, so I'll follow up a little more on that. Director Carlson, anything?
Yeah, all about the pool. I had the pleasure of attending the district's 60th birthday party on June 12th at the pool. And it was a beautiful day, and I'm glad to celebrate 60th birthday, even if we don't have the summer spectacular this year. But on June 10th, my son was in the Aquasol swim group, and he and I, my family and I, got to see Patrick Salmon do a Q&A. So Patrick Salmon is a 17-year-old member of Aquasol, and he is currently in the USA Olympic team trials. Apparently it's on NBC. I haven't tried to find it yet, but the trials, he's in the second wave. He was in the first wave, and now the second wave goes till the 20th, June 20th. But the Aquasol kids sat down and they had little index cards and could ask him questions. and it was at the community center. So it was between like the gym and the office out there on the cement. And it was so amazing. It was such an amazing, positive community event going on. The swimmers asked amazing questions, and young Mr. Salmon is really mature. I was so impressed with his answers, and I was so happy to have my son listening to these answers. And I just want to say it was really wonderful to have that energy at the Cameron Park Community District, right there by the pool, that our bonds are paying for this infrastructure, and we have this amazing product coming out of it. So it was just a very exciting week. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Carlson. Yeah, I just got a few things to report in myself. One being, I got the opportunity, thank you, General Manager, for the invitation on this, to meet with staff on Tuesday, June 1st. This is kind of one of these first opportunities outside as the summer's starting for staff. They had lunch and just a chance to meet some of them that I hadn't met before, as well as to give them a little heads up on the General Manager search process and make us available for questions or for any input. And we'll be scheduling some more of that along the way for staff input on it. But it was really nice to be on our property and to be with all the staff, new and old, and just get to know them a little bit. So that really enjoyed getting to do that. Want to do that again. Second piece is Felicity was talking about swimming pool and swimming. I want to report on basketball and the gym. As part of what we've been able to do over this last year is youth sports in the gym. And some of you might not realize we have a local AAU basketball program. It's called AllNet. It's run by Clark Woods, who's the varsity coach at Ponderosa High School. And my son is a part of that. All that to say, it's summertime and it's tournament time. So these teams from AllNet went to Reno over the Memorial Day weekend, and the 8th grade team took first place in their consolation bracket. Yes, did really well. Exciting stuff. JV and varsity teams did excellent. I think the varsity won theirs as well, and JV was second or third. But all three teams were outstanding and just really fun to watch. It was at the convention center there in Reno. So lots of teams from all over, lots of states represented. So even in a smaller version of COVID, there were 25 courts happening at the same time there in the convention center. And our kids who've been training there in the gym at the CSD for months now did a fabulous job. They've got another tournament coming up in Vegas in July. Not looking forward to that. But just want you to know that these little things happening each week are sending our kids into other places, and we're representing our community well. That was great. Last piece was the Gateway meeting. I want to thank Director Bazette for being there too. And also for all of our staff, for Jill and Mike and Jed and Jessica, who all came out to that. General Manager, would you say we had 25, 30 people there? Yeah, I think you're muted. So, but I saw the head nod.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, so they started showing up, brought their chairs, sat in a circle, and it was nice. We all of us got to give a little piece of the presentation, open up for questions, lots of questions and comments. Some folks concerned about different things, some folks really happy with some of the work we've done. I think we all came away from it recognizing that, number one, folks were grateful to be heard and to be told that, look, this is a process, because some of the concerns were about the park's improvement plan and potential paths and all that. We got the chance to just say, this was a plan we put in place to help us have a plan so we can go after grants, so we can set priorities, all that. While some of this might happen, it's a little down the road, and there's plenty of time for public input in the planning process of all this. So I was really proud of our staff, how they handled all that and answered questions. Got some good input from a few community members afterwards, kind of on those on the side conversations, and some really appreciation for what we did. So I came away from that really glad. And a few things, Jill, that I don't know if you have your list in front of you, probably not, but stuff that we can work on even more a little immediately, just to be helping out there, because they brought some specific concerns that were legitimate and we want to know about. So I was grateful to hear on that from them and give us a chance to respond and act on community things. So Great meeting. Appreciate everybody being there. And that's my report. So unless we have anything else to bring forward, I think we are at the end of our agenda for tonight. So we will call for an adjournment. Yes, ma'am.
Before I just want to say thank you for all of the board members being so engaged, and we're all like touching different aspects of the district, and to bring it forward to hear from each other. I mean, I just really enjoy this part of the meeting, and I just want to say thank you for everyone for being engaged, and I appreciate all you. And then I'd make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
All right. Do we need a vote, General Manager?
I'll take a roll. Director Asen,
Aye.
Director Carlson,
You're muted.
Aye.
Director Bazette,
Aye.
Scobie,
Aye.
and Wooten.
Aye.
Okay.
All right. So we will be adjourning this meeting. It's 9:04 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for your good work tonight.
Good night, everyone.
Night,
Thank
Good
everyone.
night,
Good
everyone.
night, everybody.
This is my,
Good one.
my